Okay, so I have a loose ends topic I want to throw at you, and this is the topic of subtypes and what we call is relationships. Before we get into these is relationships, let's take a closer look at really the relationships that we've studied so far, which we would call has relationships. Let me explain what I mean by that. Okay, so this topic, these are two unrelated models here. So in this department employee example, we would say a department has employees in it. Okay. Conversely, an employee has a department, which is, that employee's home department. So that would be a has a relationship. Same thing with the employee and the skill. An employee has a skill or has multiple skills. A skill, a specific skill, such as typing or speaking Spanish or something, is had or has many employees attached to it. So these are has relationships, and by far the vast majority of relationships are has relationships. Okay, now let's take a look at an interesting scenario here where we have the students. Let's say I'm going to design a database for a university. So this is a large state university, and they have all kinds of students. We have undergraduate students, we have graduate students, we maybe have a medical school with medical students and a law school with law students, so a very large university with all kinds of students. And so as I'm designing the student table, I'm thinking, well, okay, I need a student ID. We'll make that the primary key. And, we'll talk more about attributes and, these types of different various columns or fields in a table. I know we haven't really talked about these yet, but we're headed there. Every student has a first name and a last name and an address and an email address and a date of birth and maybe a social security number, all of these things that we care to track about the student. But then I'm thinking, for my undergraduate students, I want to be able to record their high school GPA for admissions purposes, okay? So I need to know their high school GPA as they're coming into my university. And then I'm also thinking about these undergrad students, and they take the ACT or the SAT. So I'll want to record the SAT and ACT scores too for the undergraduate students. And we have graduate students, so I'm thinking, all right, a lot of them are taking the GRE, so I have to put a GRE score column to record those values for the graduate students. Also, graduate students will have a finalized undergrad GPA from when they got their bachelor's degree. So I'll have to put a column in there. And the medical students take the MCAT, so I'll have to put the MCAT score in here, and then the LSAT for the law students. So you can see this table is getting out of control very quickly when I'm thinking of all the different types of students, all these specialized students. So this is not the way you would handle it, this scenario. When you throw everything but the kitchen sink into a table, like I've done here, we create a situation which would result in what we call value inappropriate nulls. So, for example, the vast majority of students at any university are going to be undergrad students, four-year bachelor-seeking students, undergraduate students. They're not going to have GRE scores. They're not going to have undergraduate GPAs because they're still working on their undergraduate GPAs. So they're not going to have MCAT scores. Most people don't go to medical school. They're not going to have LSAT scores. Most people don't go to law school. So so if I threw all those columns in here, a lot of them would be null, meaning nothing in there for the vast majority of students. Okay. So this is not the way to handle this scenario. So a better way would be to create subtypes. And what we do is we have a supertype, which is just the generic student data. So all students would be represented by this student type, the supertype. Okay, so all data or all attributes like name, phone number, address, everything common to all students would go into the supertype. Okay, nothing specialized here. All students have a first name, a last name, an address, a cell phone number, an email address, and so on, date of birth. Okay, and then we put the specialized attributes, such as high school GPA, ACT score, SAT score for the undergraduate student, we put those into a subtype. Okay, just the specialized attributes go into the subtypes. Okay, so there's the undergraduate. We have the grad student subtype with the GRE score, for example, just those specialized attributes for the graduate student. And then if I had the med student subtype, we would have, the MCAT in there, or whatever, specialized to just those med students. So this is by far the better way to do it.
Device is ready to pair.
So that's definitely the better option, because we're not going to have all these value inappropriate nulls. So yeah, those are the subtypes, and these are what we would call an is-a relationship. Okay, so we would say an undergraduate student is a student, right? A graduate student is a student. A medical student is a student. So that's an is-a relationship. I have one more I can show you too. We have a vet clinic example. Okay, so we've got a lot of patients coming into the clinic, dogs, cats, ferrets, hamsters, whatever. And, every patient is going to have like a patient ID, a patient name, maybe a date of birth if it's known, a breed of that animal, and then other data as well, like owner information and whatnot, contact information. But certain animals have certain, diseases and conditions associated with them that other animals do not. So, for example, for the canine, they have they can get canine distemper. Okay, that's obviously a disease that is specific to dogs, right? So not all patients are dogs. We've got a lot of cats, we've got ferrets, we've got hamsters. So that would create value inappropriate nulls if I were to just throw that into the patient entity. So instead we'll do a subtype, a canine subtype, and then we'll put all the things specific to dogs into the canine subtype. All right. And then cats. Cats have their own set of problems, right? Feline leukemia, for example. That's a feline thing. All right. We're not going to test dogs for feline leukemia or ferrets or hamsters. So anything specific to cats will go into a feline subtype. So again, we're creating just a tighter data model, and we're not going to have all these value inappropriate nulls. And once again, these are is-a relationships. A canine is a patient at the clinic. A feline is a patient at the clinic.